Hello, friends. Welcome to Literary Concepts. Today's topic is the Augustan Age. So, the Augustan Age is the second phase of the neoclassical period. So, this Augustan Age started in 1700 and ended in 1750. Now, let us try to understand about the Augustan Age. The Augustan Age started in 1700 and ended in 1750 in English literature is also known as Age of Pope. So this age is also known as Age of Pope or Neoclassical Age. So the name of the Augustan Age is given after the Emperor Augustus of Rome. The Rome King Augustus' name is given to this age name as Augustan age because during the Augustus rule, the literary the literature was in its highest quality. Okay, we find that the literature was in a superior quality. So therefore, the same kind of superior quality want to maintain by the English writers during this Augustan age. So they were the writers of the Augustan age inspired by the ideals of the ancient Rome and Greece Augustan writers. So they were inspired and admired by the principles followed by the Rome and Greek Augustan writers. Therefore, they want to create the literature that was refined, rational, and socially conscious. Okay, the Augustan age writers they want to they want to create literature so that was refined, that is renewed, okay, renewed and rational, logical, and socially so conscious, socially awakened works. So this period is also considered as the height of the neoclassicism in English literature. So in English literature, this period is uh, considered, okay, treated as the peak. Understand the highest point of the neoclassicism. So where that the emphasizing they give importance to the harmony, wit, and moral clarity. The writers emphasize more on harmony, wit, and moral clarity. Understand that is wit means that intelligence or cleverness. So this period was dominated by classicism. Understand? So that is following the traditional style, following the traditions of Rome and Greek. So classicism, reason, satire, and a focus on order and decorum. So that we find the classicism and the reason, satire, and a focus given to order and decorum. So that is a decency, a good manners during the Augustan age, and and also we also find the rise of journalism, satire, and the novel were also the key developments of Augustan age. We also see the development of journalism, satire, and the novel during this time, during this period. Now, try to understand about the characteristics of the Augustan age. The first characteristic is imitation of classical literature. So that is the following, okay, the imitation of emulating the classical literature. So writers of Augustan age they inspired and admired and followed Greek and Roman writers like Homer, Virgil, and Horace. So the writers of the Augustan age, they followed the great writers of Greek and Rome like Homer, Virgil, and Horace. The second characteristic is emphasis on reason and order. We find the literature focused more on logic, structure, so that is the design and the style of writing and clarity, so which were influenced by the classical models. So the classical works, they were influenced more by the classical works. The third characteristic is use of satire. So the writers like Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift used this satire and used wit and irony to criticize society and politics of Augustan age. The next characteristic is the use of heroic couplet. So we find the poetry of the Augustan age often written in heroic couplets. So the heroic couplets means a pair. So heroic couplets, that is rhymed iambic pentameters. So reflecting the precision and elegance. So we find that exactness, the accuracy and the clarity at the same time, that elegance, understand the beauty and style in the poetry of the Augustan age. The next characteristic is the rise of journalism and periodicals. During the Augustan period, we find that writers like Joseph Addison and Richard Steele, they popularized essays and newspapers, and they developed the journalism and periodicals. So the development of the journalism and periodicals we find during the Augustan period. The next characteristic is the growth of the novel. The early novel emerged with writers like so the beginning of the novel, started because of the writers like Daniel Defoe and Samuel Richardson. So the development of the novel started during the Augustan age. And the next characteristic is social and political commentary. Literature of the Augustan age often reflected, focused on contemporary issues, such as class dynamics, the politics, and morality of the period. So these are the characteristics of the Augustan age. Now let us try to understand about the major writers and their works. The first writer is Alexander Pope, whose time span is between 1688 to 1744. So Pope was the leading poet of the Augustan age. Because of that, this Augustan age is also called as a age of Pope. So he used the heroic couplet more. He is famous for his use of heroic couplet and his sharp satirical wit. So his important works are, the first one is The Rape of the Lock, which was published in 1712, and it was further expanded in 1714. So it was a mock heroic poem satirizing the 18th century aristocratic life. The Rape of the Lock was a mock heroic poem which satires the 18th century aristocratic life, the high class, the upper class life. Understand. The next work is an essay on criticism, so which was published in 1711. So it was a poetic treatise, it was a poetic work on literary theory and good taste. The essay on criticism is a poetic work. A treatise means work, so which focuses on literary theory and good taste. The next work is the Dunciad, so which was written between 1728 to 1743. It was a satirical attack on dull writers and bad poetry. So this the Dunciad was a satirical attack on dull writers and bad poetry. The next work is an essay on man, an essay on man, which was written between 1733 to 1734. So it was a philosophical poem exploring human nature and the universe. So the essay on man explores uh, human nature and the universe. The next writer is Jonathan Swift, whose lifetime started in 1667 and ended in 1745. So he was the master of a satire. He was a master of satire. So his important works are Gulliver's Travels, which was published in 1726. Gulliver's Travel is a satirical novel criticizing the politics, society, and human folly, that is, human mistakes or the foolishness. Understand Gulliver's Travel. It is very, very popular novel. The next work is A Modest Proposal, which was published in 1729. This is a satirical essay, which suggests that the poor could sell their children as food. Understand? So a modest proposal is a satirical essay where that the poor people could sell their children as food. The next work is The Battle of the Books, which was published in 1704. So it was a defense of the classical literature. So it is a in support. So it is protecting a okay. It supports a classical literature against modern writers. The next work is A Tale of a Tub. It was published in 1704. It is a satire. A Tale of a Tub is a satire on religious corruption and literary pretensions. Literary pretensions. Understand hypocrisies. So the next writer is Daniel Defoe, whose time period started in 1660 and ended in 1731. So his important works are Robinson Crusoe, which was published in 1719. So it was considered the first English novel. Robinson Crusoe was considered as the first English novel. Do remember, this a particular work is considered as a first English novel. So you may get it in set or net examinations or any other competitive exams for English literature. So which tells that this Robinson Crusoe focuses, okay, tells the story of a survival and self-reliance. Understand? The next work is Moll Flanders, which was published in 1722. So it was a novel about a woman's struggles with morality and society. Moll Flanders is a novel about women's struggles, women's problems, okay, the fights and struggles with morality, moral values, and society. The next work of Daniel Defoe is A Journal of the Plague Year, which was published in 1722. It was a fictionalized, imaginary, imaginary, fabricated account of the Great Plague of the London. So, basis on the Great Plague of the London, basis on that particular uh, phenomenon. So, this work was written and published in a fictionalized manner. The next writer is Joseph Addison, whose time period started in 1672 and ended in 1719, and Richard Steele, whose time period started in 1672 and ended in 1729. So Edison and Steele were the influential in the development of the periodical essay. So Joseph Edison and Richard Steele, they they were influential. They influenced a more. Okay, they contributed more in the development of the periodical essays. So that is in journals. Okay, in periodicals. So his their important work. Okay, their important work. The Spectator. So which was written between 1711 to 1712. So, The Spectator is a series of essays. So, Spectator is a series of essays promoting morality, good taste, and social manners, which focuses on morality, moral values, and good taste and social manners. Understand? The next work is these are the periodicals. So, The Spectator and the Tatler. The Tatler is a journal which was written between 1709 and 1711. So, it was a journal focusing on the news, gossips, and literary criticism. Understand? The Tatler, so these, the Spectator and the Tatler, uh, okay, will be asked repeatedly in any competitive examination by the Joseph Addison and Richard Steele, okay, regarding to the periodicals or journals. So do remember, so these two names. Now, the next writer is Samuel Richardson, so whose life started in 1689 and ended in 1761. His important works are, the first one is Pamela, so are Virtue Rewarded. So the Virtue Rewarded is a subtitle of Pamela, which was published in 1740. So this Pamela or Virtue Rewarded is also very important for the sake of competitive exams. So the first novel of sentiment. So Pamela is the first novel of sentiment. So it is about a servant's girl's virtue and struggles, difficulties. Okay. The next one, the next work is Clarissa, which was published in 1748. So it was a tragic novel about a woman's resistance to coercion and manipulation. Understand? So Clarissa is a tragic novel. It is about a woman's resistance to, okay, opposition to coercion, that is oppression or suppression, and the manipulations. One more work of the Samuel Richardson is The History of Sir Charles Grandison, so which was published in 1753. The next writer is Henry Fielding, whose time span started in the 1707 and ended in 1754. So Henry Fielding's important works are Joseph Andrews. So Joseph Andrews, which was published in 1742. So it was a comic novel satirizing social hypocrisy, so social pretensions. Understand that. So Joseph Andrews. The next one, Tom Jones. Henry Fielding's Tom Jones, which was published in 1749. It is a picaresque novel. Picaresque means it is related to the rogue or rascals. Picaresque means rogue or rascal. So it is a picaresque novel following the adventures of an illegitimate child. Understand? Illegal, unlawful child. So the adventures means the daring, risky activities of an unlawful, illegal child in Tom Jones. The next writer is Lady Mary Wortley Montague. Wortley Montague. So, whose life started in 1689 and ended in 1762. Montague was known for her letters. She was famous for her letters, so which provides insightful, very deep understanding and observations on the social and political life of her time, understand, of her period, as well as her experiences traveling to Ottoman Empire. So, in this, okay, in her works, we find that the social and political life, and at the same time, her experiences of traveling to Ottoman Empire. Her important work is Letters of the Right Honorable Lady Mary Wortley Montague, which was published in 1763. So these are the important writers of the Augustan age. I hope you understand the concept of the Augustan age and the important writers and their works. Thank you so much.